Hello and welcome back to The Dive, presented by Honda, Season 5, Episode 10, and we have finished the spring split. Our first lock-in tournament, our first, condensed spring split as well. And honestly, I think it went pretty well.
I think it was a disaster.
It's crazy, man. It's I enjoyed it. I definitely think it makes whatever you want to call this section of the year. I don't know if it's still considered spring
More
split
fun,
or
yeah.
the
I
spring
mean, it's still
section
spring,
or
yeah.
whatever. Makes it go by a lot faster, right? Because it feels like two distinct things happening in the same period that one did, which I really enjoyed. Because I do think that there can sometimes be, in a 9-week split, this feeling of like, okay, it's slowing down a little bit in the middle or towards the end, and then it speeds up right before playoffs. I didn't really feel that this split at all because it was only 6 weeks. It's like it just felt like it was progressing so quickly, having that third game played each week, which I actually really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, when week 3 hit and it's like, all right, we're halfway through the season, I was like, what the?
Yeah,
because usually that's like, oh, I'm beginning to really get a feeling for these teams. Then you have another 2 weeks basically before you get to that part, and then here it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're starting to talk MVP after 3 weeks. Here we go.
It felt really good to me, honestly. I really enjoyed the lock-in tournament. The only single bad thing that I didn't like is that some people were using only spring split stats. And I wanted to include lock-in tournament plus spring because it's all spring. It does introduce some stats difficulties with there being some players with more games because lock-in tournament it is not even. But I wanted to use all data, and so there would be times I actually felt kind of bad for Cajal because one of his questions was most solo kills in spring, and then one of his answers was Alfari and perks were his two answers. And guess what? If you include lock-in tournament, that's right, Alfari is number 1. But they in the actual stats that they use was only spring, so they didn't have the lock-in ones, and they're like, nope, you only get credit for the perks answer because obviously switching up those things.
Kind of tough.
That's a small gripe.
Because it's like if you include it, I mean, you can do like game average stats, right? But like total kills and stuff like that doesn't really feel fair because it's Cloud9 had 17 games I think played in lock-in. It's like just insane, right? They've played so many more games than a team who got knocked out right off the bat. So
you just have to turn those stats into per game stats. So like solo kills per game.
Yeah.
For Alfari, I think still would be number 1.
I'm on the other side. I was one of the people arguing not to include them because I think it's just totally different environment. You're in like this group system where not everyone's playing everyone. So if you were in the 100 Thieves TL group, you could argue it was tougher or something. I thought it was just too different. Plus, everyone was with their weaker, like their non-starting rosters in a lot of ways. There were a number of teams that couldn't do that. So I was on the
COG was like that for a long time in spring.
I was in the crumple them up. That was a cool, fun time, and just send them over there. Those stats are dead to me.
It was also just looked at differently, right? Like this is a tournament where people were trying hard, but it's also not affecting your world's qualification and stuff, right? So I do think that some teams were going to be more willing to try some different things, a little bit more lock-in and whatnot, and play a little bit more loose.
I mean, even if you do per game stats, Fudge played 10 games against Alfari in someday. It's like that's not a fair 10 games to use as his stats. He would be at the bottom of the table forever if we included those stats. So I think a fresh slate was pretty needed for some people.
Yeah, there's probably a middle ground because you always want more data. And I feel like a lot of people doing the thing where you chop off part of your brain, like, oh yeah, crumple it up, that was great, that never happened type of thing. Definitely part of the story. But another thing to review with the spring split ending is going to be our spring split power rankings, because when we made them, we we're like, all right, this is going to be end of spring split. And then first week of lock-in tournament, everybody's immediately using those power rankings to be like, hey, doesn't match up. What gives?
Yeah, well, thankfully for them, it also doesn't match up at the end. So
what gives?
Yeah, so what gives? Well, the important thing is Kobe and I both did brilliantly, and Mark did the worst. So that's really the important takeaway here, is that Mark did worse than Kobe and I, who tied. And if there's anything you're left with, that's it. So
Mark did 1 point worse.
we summed up all the number of spots off we were. So if one team you put second actually ended up getting third, that was a spot off. And so if you put a team 8th or 9th, like Dignitas, and they got 5th, that's 4 or 5 points.
Your voice
Dignitas
over here.
and CLG were probably more than half of our total like spots off. Combined, because Dig was like 4 or 5 spots off for like everyone, and CLG was like 3 or 4 spots off for everyone, pretty much, because people were thinking, hey, CLG might be like 5th or something.
Yeah, you guys had 14 total wrong, and I had 15 total wrong, and I think it's one of those things where it's easy to lie to yourself, like, well, divide by 10, each team was like only 1 off almost, 1.4 spots off, but then it's like, okay, well, you had a bunch of zeros in there too from teams like C9 and Golden Guardians. It was I think a pretty tough one, all things considered, with all the developmental rosters and stuff.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, I mean, really, it's Dig and CLG were a big surprise, and then the top of the standings was so close that it's like, I was 2 off on TL, who I thought would finish first. They were 1 game behind, right? But then they were tied for second, and they had the losing head-to-head against TSM, so then they're third, right? So you're 2 points off there. So things like that, I think, make a pretty big difference. 100 Thieves, Dig, EG, etc. It's only a couple games between the top of the standings. So the big ones that we definitely missed were Dig and CLG. And honestly, if I went back, like I wouldn't have really changed my Dignitas prediction. Like I think they overperformed so much, and that's what made it so exciting, is that these guys were just straight up way better than I thought they were. And that's the one that, we missed on the most.
Yeah, for me, I would not say that CLG was also a big surprise with Dignitas. I feel like that's disingenuous to Dignitas. I think that was Dig is the big surprise of the spring split. CLG, when we were making these, and I was talking about my ranking for them because it was a whole 1 point higher than your guys' ranking. Mm-hmm. I remember being like, all right, but they have had these visa issues in the past with like Broxa, so I actually don't know how long it's going to take for him to get over here. And lo and behold, it takes even longer, into the spring split than a lot of people thought. And while they did have more surprising, failures,
self-imposed issues too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
self-imposed issues,
like not playing Pobelter. That felt like the biggest difference to me. And they're like, well, we didn't have our roster for months. It's like, well, you chose not to play him.
Yeah, definitely true. The benching there going a long way. But back to my point, the errors were the surprising part of it. The way in which they're losing, which was, they've got all these veterans, and they're making just these boneheaded, actual just crazy mid-game shot calls where like Dragon is literally coming up in 30 seconds for Dragon Soul, and they're wasting a bunch of cooldowns and people dying on top side of the map. That type of stuff I think was the surprising part. But Dignitas was the real hero, screwing up most of the power rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had EG6 because I was pretty sure one of the like developmental teams would actually hit. And my bet was on FlyQuest, which is where I think my 15 came from instead of your guys' 14. Was I put my faith in FlyQuest and they let me down, whereas Dig actually was the 5th place spot that I had given to FlyQuest, and I put EG6, which was right.
My power rankings at the top were like slightly different than your guys. You guys were aligned 1 through 4, and mine was a little bit different, right? So I think I was a little bit closer on some, a little bit further off on others. Like I thought TL would finish first because I was thinking, hey, Fudge is a bit more unproven. Maybe it'll take them more time to get together with that. I think I had TSM a little bit higher than you guys as well. So it'll be interesting to see how playoffs go. But power rankings always pretty fun. Dignitas was the biggest kind of bright surprise for me. That really was a lot of fun to watch them. And I guess I would say if we are talking about differing expectations, FlyQuest didn't finish that much below, I think, where I maybe originally had them ranked. Mark had them highest at 5th. So that would have been a bit off for your FlyQuest one. But FlyQuest was a disappointment to me, I would say. Even if it wasn't in like massively off where I had them ranked, because I think I had them ranked, sixth, so they were off by like what they finished
2.
seventh, eighth.
They finished 8th. They finished
So
below
yeah, so they were
Immortals,
off
yeah.
by 2, so it wasn't like enormous. But that was one of the bigger misses, I guess, in my power rankings, and I was just surprised that they didn't really get it together more. I guess I was kind of thinking that they would have had things looking a little bit better out of the gate as far as the development rosters. I think, for those rosters, that was the one that people were betting on, right? That was the one where people were like, okay, well, if it's going to be like Golden Guardians, Immortals, Dignitas, FlyQuest. Well, FlyQuest is the one that's going to be like hot out the gate, right? They've got Licorice and Jose Dioto. That's going to work. But it didn't really come together, I think, as quickly as I expected. And I know they are still kind of experimenting, right? They brought in Dreams now instead of Diamond. And I think he looked okay. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of like grow in towards summer. And I'm also just interested in general to see, if any of these teams make roster swaps, right? Like, does Golden Guardians, swap things up and maybe give, some of the more green players some time to develop an academy, right? Like, are we going to see Niles in the LCS in summer, or is he going to get some academy time to try to work on some skills before he tries to make his way back up? Like, that's something I'm kind of interested to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, Hanser is currently playing in Academy, and it seems like that guy's pretty good, doing pretty well with with his top lane play. Yeah, I think what's interesting about these is not really the small adjustments of how far off, but why and some of the individuals. I think Jose has really over many games displayed really good mechanics, good pathing. So I think that there are pieces, and you start to think about, like you're saying, what things are going to change for these teams that were a little bit below expectations, and what pieces they're going to keep. Palafox, I think, made a late resurgence. I was pretty worried for him in the beginning of the split with some of the performance, but started making some really big plays towards the end.
TF Baron
The Silas game, the Twisted Fate, the Twisted Fate one for sure. That's what you put on your resume. A little clip right there, just to show your clutch late game plays. That being said, Dignitas is one of our playoff teams, unlike some of the other underperformers that we were discussing. Do you have any of these members make it all the way up to our Honda MVP section? Because I feel like most of the conversation is around Alfari versus Blabber versus Sword Art, probably for the top 3 contenders.
Really, Sword Art? Interesting. I
Who's your TSM person? Would you say PoE over him? Because I don't think I think that's even difficult with the other mid laners on TSM.
It's tough.
Or, I mean, yeah, exactly. That's why you're like,
Well, because I feel like really? TSM kind of like more won and lost as a team, right? Like it was less like about like one shining individual. It was more about like, some bad decisions as a team, or everyone not playing that well or something. Like it's hard because like I feel like Huni, it was actually really good for them in the later weeks, but if you look back to the earlier weeks, I'd have to kind of like
there's zero chance you put him over Alfari.
Exactly, right? And then but I feel the same way for Sword Art. Sword Art I don't think could be considered above like Vulcan. Like, for example, I think Vulcan had a much better split. There's like guys like Core JJ that you could even consider, or Afro maybe. Like I really would have to dig in and kind of try to convince myself of that, because I felt like in the earlier weeks, Sword Art was not doing that much, right? Like he was fine. People gave him a lot of credit for that one Maokai support game early on, but largely everyone was roasting Sword Art for being a waste of $6 million, right? Like that was mostly what the Sword Art discussion was about. So to me, I don't think I could have him in there as an MVP candidate.
So no TSM member?
I mean, maybe PoE. Like I haven't really spent a huge amount of time thinking about exactly what my ballot is going to be, and like I'll dig into the stats when I do that. But I think PoE has been the most consistent for TSM, but I don't think TSM will win MVP this split. And that's not a knock on the team. That's not to say I don't think that you could be the best team. I just think that they more won and lost as a squad this time. And there was less one shining star who like was rising above the rest to carry them to the promised land, right? Like that was the Bjergsen of old, where it's like, TSM scraped their way into playoffs because Bjergsen 1v9 10 games in a row. It didn't have to be that, right? Which in some ways I think is really a good thing for TSM, is that you're less dependent on one individual to just 1v9 the games, right? I think that they had some really good games from a lot of different people, but it wasn't one person just dominating every time.
I think for MVP, a lot of the time you have to have some level of, like you're saying, dominance over the rest of your position in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the entire position, like maybe there's someone who can test you at the top, but like you need to kind of crush most of the other people in your pool. And to that point, like I think there were a number of players that played really well in TSM, but like not such a huge gap between them and the other people. And I think this was an interesting split because most teams had a stumble. TL and TSM stumbled right out of the gate. And while Alfari is probably the best candidate on TL, like he had some meh games at the beginning after crushing lock-in.
Got blasted by Revenge. Had a couple bad cannon games.
Yeah, he had a couple bad games. Sword Art, as we already said, had a couple bad games. And during that time, Blabber is hard smurfing and just clearly the best jungler in the league for the first 4 weeks. And then week 5 hits and C9 has their 1 and 2. And, Blabber has a little bit worse of the last 2 weeks. And so, you start having to balance, because it is a split long award. Like you do have to take those Sword Art games into consideration, though I do think you could argue he's maybe been the most impactful support through the last 2.5 weeks.
Here's the thing for both of you guys: you have to have 3 votes for MVP.
Yeah.
and it's given that Blabber and Alfari are top 2. Who is your third person on the docket? You gotta have 3.
And I will. I mean, I just haven't decided yet.
I'll be honest, it might be a FBI for me. I think he's been amazing this whole split. I think
that actually.
His laning is absolutely disgusting. They basically hard stomp every lane in the league. When I was talking about the dominance, like FBI has that dominance over the rest of the AD carry position, and he doesn't become like a trash can in the late game. I still think he's a really, really, really good team fighter too. Like, so you have early game dominance, great team fighting. There, like all those other people that I just talked about, there have been moments where I'm like, what the hell are you doing, FBI? Like some of the plays in the middle of the season where they're not reacting to a TP behind them and him and Huhi are just dying, or like some of their failed dives and stuff like that. I think you can look at and maybe it's not so clear, but right now I would actually probably lean towards FBI and then maybe PoE, but I'd really, like to Azael's point, I haven't done like the deep dive into rewatching games.
A lot of
and stuff like
stats
that.
for ADs and stuff are also pretty janky because of the fasting Senna games. So you kind of
stats seems to pull them out. They'll do it for you.
So yeah, you have to look at it separately, right? Because if you just look at Oracle's Elixir or whatever, if you look by like laning phase, Sven has an insane CSD, right? Like Sven's CSD is almost 12 at 10. Which is just like, what the hell?
FBI was like -20 because he played 4 or 5 fasting Senna games for the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
So. We have had plenty of we have had solo laners with that type of CSD though, so like that is within the realm of possibility. The Senna games definitely screw it up for everybody.
Yeah, Alfari is up there. He's at 11.4 CSD at 10 and that's like
exactly
just a real CSD.
That's what I'm saying. So like you're like, oh, that's crazy. Well, let me sell you on a solo laner. Yeah. What's really funny is then the supports that have the mega CSDs, because I was looking, there's a support that has over 10 CSD.
He is like almost 20 at 10 because he keeps playing farming Tom Kench games. But yeah, I mean, for me, Alfari's in there for sure. And I'm not 100% on anyone else. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that Alfari will be in one of my MVP votes, and I'm not even sure that Blabber will be yet, because I feel like yes, Alfari did have some stumbles, but he felt like so clearly the best. And everyone feels like he's the best. I think Blabber is probably in there too, but I want to really kind of do my due diligence on it, because it does feel tough now, because I do think his last 2 weeks, and it's like 2 weeks, that's not long. Well, it's a third of the season. His last 2 weeks weren't actually very good. Like he really wasn't. And I mean, some of those games were really bad. Like the game against TSM, the Lily game, where he's up 3 levels and just does nothing the entire game. This Hecarim game this last weekend, where he's just like, doesn't do anything the entire game. The only thing I remember from that whole game was just charging in 1v5 with no one around him at the mid lane turret and dying. Like these are the most memorable plays I have from Blabber over the last couple of weeks. So I don't know. I think you've got to really take it all into consideration. And because the split moves so fast, it's a little bit harder because it's just so condensed, right? So many weeks, so many games happen in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, so for jungle, it would be between Blabber and Santorin. The AD carry one, I think, Maybe Sven, maybe Neo could contest FBI. Tactical is definitely not
Neo's been
not
amazing.
in there with the Malphite ults he's been
Tactical's not
popping
even
off.
in my top 5, top 6 ADs this split. I think he's near the
No.
bottom, to be honest.
I put Turtle
Yeah,
above him.
that's
I
what
think
I'm
Turtle had a
saying.
better split.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be more of a conversation than for the first part of Spring Split, though, where it was just
Yeah.
rehits on Blabber every single week.
Supports could be in there too, right? Like should Afro be in there? Maybe. Afro had, I think, a hell of a split, right? And
Yeah.
and if you're really talking to, like, some of the people I've been talking to, have given so much credit to him, from the Dignitas side of, as far as like what he's been able to do for the team and shot calling and
Yeah.
the effect that they think they've had on the team. So, if you're looking at just purely individual performance, maybe not, but like, damn, it seems like Dignitas, deserves at least some consideration, given that they performed so far above expectation. And some of these players played really, really well. I think it's really hard. I think it's pretty unclear. I mean, if I had to bet, I'd say Alfari wins, just because he feels like the most like untainted. And even though lock-in isn't part of the award, people are still going to have lock-in in their head. It's just like, God damn, you're good. Like, holy crap, you are actually so good, right? And he is always smashing lanes. Yes, he did have a couple kind of cocky blind pick killing games that got punished, but like, he is so impactful every single game. He can play all the styles. If I had to bet, he wins MVP, but it does feel tough to vote this year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the easy one. Mid lane feels pretty hard too. Let's get on into the playoffs, though, because these MVP candidates have something in common. They will be playing in the playoffs. First up, TSM versus Team Liquid. Let's start with the banger.
They're not both bangers? They're not all bangers?
I think one of these
both.
is more close than the other one. Even though 100 Thieves did have a bit of resurgence here, and they do feel committed to Ryoma and a bit more clear on their game plan, I think the Cloud9 100 Thieves one would be a bigger upset if they win than this one between Team TSM and Team Liquid. What's your? I guess we can do a quick, overall look on both matchups. Which one do you think is going to be closer?
No, I mean, I agree with you. I just think they're both fun. I think the TSM TL one is the closer, especially with TSM having a 2-0 record over
Great
TL.
format, right? We start out with two amazing, best of series.
Yeah, this is like scary that your first matchup is this tough.
It's cool though. I mean, because you have the lower bracket, right? It's like those teams are waiting down there. We don't have to go through the weaker matchup first. I think the reason it seems like two such great matchups is because it's like, in old format, this could have been the semifinals, right? You've kind of like jumped forward and gotten to see some really incredible matchups right out the gate. We can talk about TSM TL first. I do think it is really exciting. TSM does have the 2-0 over TL, which also makes it interesting because, TL, it's almost like this kind of like rock, paper, scissors circle, right? Where like TL had been beating C9 and, C9 had been beating TSM and TSM had been beating TL and stuff. So it is kind of interesting. And I'm really excited to see what the teams are actually going to bring to the table. TL has been bringing out some pretty different stuff this last week or so. We got to see the Vagar, we got to see the Ari. I'm interested if they are just kind of like trying some stuff in the last week, or if they're like, "Ooh, Azir is actually ass now with the changes, and we need to fit some more picks in here, and we need to find what that is." Like, I wasn't quite sure what those picks were, if they are thinking, "Hey, this is the meta now," or if they're thinking, "Hey, we need to just experiment and figure out what's good for playoffs and get some stage games in," because that, I think, could really change some stuff, right? Like, there was some very differing reads. Like, obviously, Azir did drop down a fair bit as far as like priority, but some teams were still down to pick it. PoE played it, had a great game, right? PoE had, I think, a really good weekend in general. And we saw some other players take it, but then some teams were just completely ignoring it now. As far as like win rates go, like, this destroyed his win rate, right? Like, the numbers are pretty significant. Freak was telling me that the early push, the early push is something like you do like 17% less damage to the wave. So, it kind of makes sense that if it was a tight matchup before, that now you would be getting pushed in, and that could be problematic. But I'm not sure if it's really going to continue changing, or teams are going to have really different looks. But I think your read on the meta becomes so important going into playoffs because it didn't feel like everyone had the same read on it.
Yeah, I would say PoE didn't have any wave control problems
No, he didn't.
in his matchups with champions. So his confidence and continuing to pick it, I think, was rewarded.
I think Azir's one of those champs like Ryze and like the others who can have trash solo queue win rates and doesn't really reflect on competitive significantly. Because
definitely weaker though.
Pretty extreme
weaker.
though. This went down like 4 or 5%, which is a huge nerf, and it was like below 40.
They've done that to Ryze before though. Like there's a period of time where Ryze was permaban, must like first ban in competitive. And he had a 40-something% win rate as well, like 42 or something insanely low. And Azir is like, okay, well I'm going to scale. Like how many team comps in solo queue were like, yep, we're going to play a little bit less proactive in the early game. Like these kinds of things just doesn't track to solo queue. So I'm not surprised it dropped, but I will say, interesting thought, is PoE the biggest mismatch for TSM in this series? Is this the biggest advantage they have on a lane?
Single lane
position,
advantage?
Yeah.
Honestly, with how bad Tactical has been playing,
what I was
I'm actually most worried for Team Liquid about their AD carry position. And that's not even a lane phase thing. It's just like a crazy amount of times that he just gets picked off in the mid game. In like week 4, I think we started to see it where first one was like a Syndra stun he's walking through, and then the same game there's another one, and then we're seeing it still. Most recently this last weekend with a couple of the Tristana ones, and this is one of those scenarios where
playing Xayah, and he's walking through these random ass spots and just dying.
Yeah, this is one of those scenarios where I was thinking last night, like, I'm going to message Jat and try and get some information out of him, because you want every shred of info you could possibly get in these scenarios. They had a little thing where a couple weeks ago they were talking about him being burnt out, and the team is helping him with that, but there's no like further insights, to scrims or, to internal communication or what is going on there. But I'm just so sad because I was so hyped last year. I was like, hell yeah, NA rookie talent performing so well, carrying at Worlds, doing well. This guy is he's minted. He's ready to just be the next thing here for LCS. Double if retired, it's okay. We've got more where that came from, And then this split, it's brought me crashing back down to earth, I guess.
Harsh and you're mellow, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really, really sad. And at the flip side, Lost has had an upward trajectory over the course of the split. Like
exactly,
him and Sword Art were getting hard flamed. Putting Cody Sun, all these kinds of calls through about the first 2.5 weeks. And there were a couple games, I think in week 2, where if you're looking closely, Lost team fighting was actually pretty good, while the rest of TSM was still struggling to get on the same page. But then once they kind of found their play style, he's been a lot better. I still don't think I would put him in top 3 when we were kind of going over them earlier. I don't think Lost makes it in there, but I don't think he's bad by any means. And he's been a pretty reliable carry at the very least.
Yeah, it's funny you say Cody Sun, because it's kind of reminding me of Cody Sun, right? Where he's kind of, he's hanging around and he's doing some stuff in lane.
Sort out roams a lot, he kind of hangs out.
Exactly, like he's more become the late game insurance, which I think is pretty good for the team. I think PoE is playing really well lately. Like he's been having some really, really strong performances. Huni seems to have kind of found his stride. I'm really interested in what the performance from Tactical is going to be, because I do think that could dictate the series a lot. Like he has just had so many random deaths, so many terrible team fight situations where he's just like solo losing fights in situations where his team is so far ahead, or he's just getting like hard carried across the line like his Tristana game this last weekend, where it was just like, I don't even know. It was just bizarre.
You mean the genius Baron call, where
the genius
gets
Baron
caught,
call.
the team 4v5s it, and he's right back there hitting it first person on the objective.
Yeah, he just dies, gets caught, walks straight back, starts shooting the Baron, they take it. Those were tough, but I think that TL definitely have an advantage in top lane. I think Huni has been playing a lot better, but Alfari has been such a monster. And I'm most interested in how the teams want to play this out. Is it going to be TL playing towards Alfari? Like, is that the read for playoffs? All right, Tactical's not having a great time. We're going to go on counter picks for top side. We're going to play heavily around that. Try to punish Huni. Try to snowball a game through top. I just don't really know what we're going to get from these teams. And that's why I think it's so interesting. I feel like I'm favoring TSM a bit just because I think Tactical has been playing pretty poorly and had another really bad weekend, which kind of like reaffirmed that to me. But I just have no idea what to expect here.
Here's what I expect. I expect TSM to have the better late game, Team Liquid to have the better early game, and this to be the pivot point for the entire series, because TSM's late game, I would say, has been significantly better than Team Liquid. A lot of these games that Team Liquid, and even in the middle of the split, have dropped, have been due to some of those errors, and we've been calling them out, both this team and a couple of the other ones. Whereas TSM, majority of their struggles are in this early game. So if, like you're saying, it's probably going to be Alfari putting a lot of pressure out. Santorin has done very good to vary his jungle routes, so it's not always to Santorin, though. In the previous game we had this weekend, it was literally full clear, gank top for Alfari. Full clear again,
Someday
gank top
was
again.
the 7th camp.
Full clear again, fight the Rift Herald fight up there 5-on-5 and smash it. I was like, okay, well, that was easy. It's just like, start here, go full clear, go back to base. It's just a pretty insane route, honestly, from him. Genius. But I really do think this is what's cool about this matchup to me, and why I'm so hyped for it, because I love when we have such different strengths and different styles going at each other. PoE has been so good for TSM, and I've been talking about this since week 2 when they finally kind of recovered from their really poor early start. But when Huni decided to start playing more conservatively, and then PoE would teleport to protect his teammates, he has done this since week 2 so incredibly well, and it has turned into so many of these plays. You remember the first one, that Azir one to the bottom where he sweeps 4 people and he gets his quadra kill, and you're like, well, that's game. It has been TSM looking for, I feel like, these counter plays, these defense plays early on. And they have not gotten early leads, but they have been able to counter a lot of these early game plays more recently, and that is leading to a lot more consistent success. But Team Liquid have had the best early game in the LCS, and that is why it's a cool test to see which one's going to prevail.
The countering thing goes even later into the game too, because I forget which week it was. It might have been 4 or 5, and I don't know if the statistics changed since then. But there's a period of time where TSM actually had the best Baron rate in the league, in terms of like amount of times they got Baron in a game, or how many times as well, versus the amount of times that the enemy team got Baron against them. And a large part of that was because they stole Barons left and right. Like, there was a period of time where they had pulled off a Baron steal nearly every single week. And it was usually Spica, and their setups were usually pretty good. Like, some team would go down through the river, while the other person would hug the tri-brush and then go over the wall. Like, they had good setups and it was clean, but it was like, I don't know how that's going to work come playoffs. And so I think that's one of the ways that they picked up a lot of wins this split was punishing a lot of teams not clean Barons. They do need to make sure that they actually are getting leads in a series. I don't think you can realistically, it does happen sometimes, but usually the team that consistently is winning early game ends up winning a series in a best of 5. Yeah. So it is one of those things where TSM's countering is really strong, but they usually pick more scaling than their opponent, so it's not surprising that they fall behind. But there is like a limit to how far they're going to be able to go against TL if TL's playing cleanly.
That's how I feel too, but then does it not shake your faith just watching how Tactical's played some of these games, man? Like, even just looking at the TSM TL games, the initial game that you were talking about, Kobe, the Tristana game where Tactical was getting picked off in mid lane and multiple times in transition
TSM.
was against TSM, and TL built this comp with Seraphine mid, and it's all about the Tristana, and everyone play around the Tristana, and then Tristana just kept dying in fights, like getting picked off in mid lane, getting picked off walking places where he shouldn't walk. And then they had that fight top lane where he just walked into a Galio channeling taunt in vision, just stepped into the taunt, got taunted and died. And, those are the things that are really, really concerning for me, because I do feel like, it's almost like you go back to the MVP discussion and you look at TL and you look at the individual pieces, and I'm like, oh, all these individual pieces for the most part seem better, right? Like, I'd rather have Core JJ than Sword Art. I'd probably rather have Jensen than PoE. I think PoE maybe was played better this split, but like overall for the last couple of years, I think most people would rate Jensen higher. Santorin over Spica, most people would take. Alfari over Huni, most people would take. Like AD is debatable this year for sure because Tactical's had a bad split. But like TSM as a whole has looked cleaner in the late game. And I feel like the game is so bot centric that if Tactical is making mistakes, then like you can just lose a whole series off that. Like for sure, it only takes like one death, one bad fight from your AD in the late game, and AD carries the side in most of the late game fights.
Yeah, I mean, mid lane still feels really relevant
Yeah.
for me, but I do think Jensen's been pretty poor compared to his own level this split. Like, I don't think he's making egregious like turbo-inting mistakes the way you kind of noticed Tactical killing himself, but I also think he's been really unimpactful compared to his usual performance. And that's why when we started this conversation, I asked, is mid the biggest gap actually in for TSM? Because even that Ari game, like everyone focuses on like, oh my God, Tactical's killing himself all over the place. Jensen got lane swapped on, so like you can kind of ignore the first 10 minutes of it being like a weird matchup maybe. But then he was totally ineffective in the mid game. He died at the start of a number of skirmishes, and it wasn't until like the last two fights the Ari finally did something.
Yeah.
And he's been struggling all split long with having a contribution, I think, in games. He's not been terrible, but not great either.
That's what I was gonna say for the mid lane one. I would probably take both TSM carries over the Team Liquid counterparts, PoE and Lost, which is why this one is so close
It's
and
tough.
such a banger because Team Liquid they have had like in a best of 5, best of 5 can be so different than these best of 1 snapshots that we're getting throughout the weeks, and they do stick in your mind with really big, big blunders and big plays. But they have also had Team Liquid have also had those wins, right? And their game versus Cloud9, and you talk about the rock paper scissors of TSM Team Liquid Cloud9. But if you look at the Cloud9 Team Liquid games, then you're just like, oh my God, they're back. This is what you expect from them.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Like, and to back up what you're saying about Jensen for this split, I agree. I think PoE's been better this split. Just over the last couple of years, I think maybe Jensen you would take. But I was pretty surprised to see because Jensen actually has statistically like a good laning phase, right? Like he's one of the highest CSDs, but he's basically getting nothing done with that, right? As far as like actual DPM, this is something that Jensen is traditionally known for, is having really high damage output. He plays control mages and he makes it worthwhile later in the game. Right, like he's actually down near the bottom of the table as far as DPM. He's only above Palafox and Demonte. Right, like he's sitting pretty much at the bottom of the table. Demonte is not even in the league right now, so he's 9th out of 10 players as far as mid lane for actual damage output. And again, that's not everything, of course, right? Like you have to look at the whole picture. But I agree, like he's not getting done. What he has in the past. He's not as dominant as he has been in the past. Of course, I do think that he could pick it up, but it's a really exciting matchup. Like it really is. The Ari game didn't really bother me because I was kind of just thinking like, you're not really going to play this in playoffs, are you? Like I looked at that as a throwaway.
Not now.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong, right? Like, but I feel like Ari's so inconsistent, and at the pro level, that's always been the kind of criticism of this champion, is that it's like, yeah, if you hit every single thing on a carry, they die. But people are playing on no ping and really good at reacting to it. And, at the pro level, it's always been really, really inconsistent compared to a lot of these other champions that are super popular. I think Veigar's really good. So, draft is going to be interesting. But yeah, I'm feeling TSM a little bit here, which I'm surprised to hear myself saying, but I just think if you're going to be playing these long games and you're thinking it's a close series, all it takes is a couple bad fights and you could throw a series away. And maybe Tactical has a great series and TL slams, but he hasn't shown it all spring split. He's been inconsistent.
Certainly has. The Veigar
one, here we go.
Is an interesting call out, because then that would be if Team Liquid pick the Veigar and they have Jensen back on one of his super old mains, then then you do give up a decent amount of mid priority, and it's gonna be interesting as far as these two mid laners with their champion pools. It seems like our mid lane champion matchups on first glance wouldn't have a lot of, you know, spicy picks or anything. You could go this series and just not even blink and be like, yep, it was Syndra, Orianna, Azir, Victor, every single game. But if I kind of want to do, you know, see some of the spicy ones. Team Liquid, literally their you know, team account tweeted out that thing. If you get enough, if we get, what was it, 5,000 retweets or something like that,
Annie or something.
then he would play Annie on the LCS, and he never did that. So he's still got to deliver, right? Let's get some more spicy picks in mid lane. Game 5 of playoffs. That's the perfect time to deliver on bets. By the way,
the finals. Wait for the finals. That's when you get the payoff on retweets if they make it there. Jungle will also be kind of interesting. I feel like there's gonna be such a high priority on Hecarim and some of these engaged style comps. So, but for the most part, it feels like jungle has just become either you ban out all three of the kind of like OPs in Udyr, Olaf, Hecarim, or you leave two open and you trade, right? And it feels like that's what draft has kind of become. I don't know if you think there's any other picks that should really be sneaking in there, Kobe, to change things up, but like feels like that's the most consistent right now. And then if you want AP, you go Lilia or Nidalee. Beyond that, it doesn't really feel like we're seeing too much innovation or anything.
Yeah, I feel like because you really can't fake your way into the clear speed club. Like if you can't keep up with the clear speed squad, then tough luck. You suck. You're not as good. You're gonna have to like make a lot of stuff happen and really have value. And the only, you know, like if we're looking at the 100 Thieves Cloud9 one, I'd be like, okay, you know, that one I could see some more mix up in the jungle pool. But especially for this TSM Team Liquid one, I would say Nidalee is a player-specific champion for sure. This is one of the most, you know, player-dividing champions because some players just cannot, you know, utilize it well. I would say that Spica can certainly utilize it well and probably has a bit, I would put a higher Nidalee weight than Santorin. I wouldn't exclude Santorin from the Nidalee club by any means, but I do think it's a bit more, you know, priority for his side. So like there's
he's
a
in the club,
slight more there, but yeah, exactly. But Santorin is a big proponent of all of the clear speed club, those top 4 you're talking about. So yeah, I don't expect there to be super, you know, crazy variation there either.
All right.
Top lane probably has the most variety in our pick ban, top and bottom lane for this matchup.
Yeah. I think we see the good old Lucian top pulled out now. This is playoffs.
that would
run that back a couple times.
That would be really funny. Top lane
predictions?
Yeah, I'm
or
down
are we
for
doing top lane?
predictions. I'm down for predictions. I don't think there's that much more to say about top lane. You know, we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think it's just a question of if Huni's going to be playing weak side or if they actually want to try to go carry versus carry and really go at Alphari. I think that'll be pretty interesting to see. But for me, like I said, I'm just losing my faith in my boy Tactical. So as a result of that, I think TSM has a stronger late game, and I think that, you know, these small mistakes in playoffs cost you series, and we've seen that so many times throughout the LCS history. Is that it's often the player who makes the big mistake, and it feels like Tactical's been making a lot of those throughout spring split. If he has a great split, or rather a great series, I think TL could slam, but I haven't seen it. Haven't seen him string together the wins. So
if he has
TSM
a
3-2.
Yeah, if he has a great series, I think that they definitely do slam.
Yep.
Man, it's so hard because those things you're like, that's got to be easy to fix, right? That's got to be one of the things.
Stop killing yourself.
In review, you're like, coach brings up the VOD, and you're like, we don't even have to show. I know. You know, we already know.
But it's been weeks.
I know. That's why I'm just like,
Yeah.
What the heck? It's actually so difficult. I am going to put my prediction on TSM now, but I have not messaged Jat yet, and it'll depend if I flop for broadcast on if he can convince me. If Jat can convince me, then I'm swapping.
Jat is not. You're not going to message Jat, and he's going to be like, "Yeah, Kobe, my team's ass. Definitely don't predict."
It's so telegraphed now,
no
too.
way. There's no way.
If Kobe flip flops now, then we know that TL is doomed. That's when we know. Because the coach was like, Kobe, get your prediction off my team.
Well,
dude.
he already
You're
said
gonna-
he's going TSM. So
No,
it's if he,
Oh, it's the
Mark,
other
I'm
way.
starting TSM. I'm gonna
Oh.
message
So if he
Jat to see
doesn't
if he can
flip-flop,
flop me.
if he
Yeah.
doesn't
The-
flip flop, then TL's for sure doomed because Jat
right,
couldn't
and the
convince
point still
him.
stands.
Yeah, exactly.
Either
And
way.
I feel like I obviously have known and worked with Jet since literally the very beginning of LCS. When it founded, I can tell. Okay, he even though Azael was like, yeah, he's not gonna say, "Oh, our team is ass." I'm pretty sure I'll be able to tell from the language he uses. So we'll see about that. What you got, Mark?
I'll be the contrarian. I think TL will win.
Okay, I may or may not join you.
What are your series scores?
I may or may not
Cowards.
leave either, too. You don't know. I'll see what some
Oh, I'm
interviews come out.
slamming a 3-2, both because I do think it is close and because that's the most exciting.
Yeah, I think for me, I think TL should, in theory, win. But I think when you look at what's happened over the course of the season, TSM could very understandably be the favorite. I think in terms of the mistakes by Tactical, the ability of TSM to scale and like get Barons and these kinds of things, I always feel like are a little bit harder to rely on in best of fives. But if I could easily see it going the other way, and like I said, I could easily flip flop too. I want to see what comes out of these teams.
Give me your
like
score, Mark.
you know,
You're not saying a number.
the
Yeah.
interviews. TL 3-2. It's going to be 3-2.
It's all
no matter what I'm
3-2s,
predicting.
okay.
Yeah.
So that
No matter what I
guarantees that it's not a 5-game series. Is what I've learned now. You know,
It's going to be a 3-0 slam.
Yeah.
in
it could be
favor
a
of one of the
3-0
teams.
slam one way or the other.
We're all
now
going to
that
look
we've
like
all-
idiots.
It's for a 5-game for sure. Bam, 3-0. Done in
It's like
2 hours.
we're going back to review, going into this matchup, and we're like, all right, pull up the VOD of Team Liquid. Ooh, this is their game versus Cloud9. Hell yeah, Team Liquid 3-0. I'm pretty sure they're gonna win. All right, now let's pull up like
Ooh, 0-3.
yeah, it's yeah.
All right. Well, I'm really excited for this. I'm genuinely super excited for both the series. Let's get into the other one. C9 versus 100 Thieves. I agree. It does feel a lot more one-sided. This one, I think, if you were looking back to the start of the season, a lot of people were considering, hey, 100 Thieves could be a championship contender. I think they're still selling that, but I don't think anyone's buying anymore. I do think that a lot of faith has kind of been lost in 100 Thieves. I guess it depends how much you're kind of bought in on the development of Ryoma and some of the games that they've shown recently. But it does feel more one-sided.
I would say the thing I am definitely buying from 100 Thieves is bottom lane.
Mhm.
That is sold. I will pre-order another version, volume 2 of FBI
Collector's
Hootie.
edition.
Yeah.
Give me that. I'm getting collector's edition. I'm down with the 100 Thieves bottom lane. Get some bottom lane focus. Design some comps around that sucker. Let's go. The problem is that these dives towards bottom lane are going to be very telegraphed because guess what? Everybody knows that this is the best product that they're selling right now is a lot of that bottom lane carry. I do think at least for the to touch on the Ryoma switch, he's done quite well for himself. I have liked the versatility. His damage output has been significantly higher. Of course, that's due to the difference in styles that and Tamonte spending so much time roaming to lanes and stuff like that. So as far as that goes, I don't think they get as many demerits for that as like people were just so pissed initially with the change because I also think if they had Demonte going into this, I don't think my prediction would change too much. Unless
It depends on their current form, of course, right? If it was lock in or early split 100 Thieves with Demonte, I think my prediction, my view would change. But that's more
if they were
of
coming off
the whole team is playing better thing, right? It's not just a one player thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I mean,
that's what I'm trying to get. If they're coming off, they're like, oh, we're still undefeated on Twisted Fate, 5-0. Demonte, he got benched before he lost on this champion, it is a lot of the team playing better, but him creating a lot of action for them, and it feels like they have lost some of that direction.
Yep.
Maybe in this last weekend, getting some of it back though.
I think even if it was 100 Thieves lock-in form going against current form C9 would still be the favorite though, right? Because they have improved since lock-in when they already beat 100 Thieves in a best of 5.
Have Cloud9 improved since lock-in?
I think so.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
I mean, they've stumbled a little bit since
As a-
their midseason form, but compared to their lock-in form, they look a lot better. They're way more coordinated.
Yeah. Yeah, Fudge I think looks a lot better as well, right?
I
To
think
be fair
Perks
to
looks
him.
better. I think
Yeah, Perks definitely look better. I agree. You know, the one thing I will say is you know, with the Ryoma thing, I didn't bring him up to be like, hey, let's dunk on Ryoma, but it's more like it feels like one of these things ain't like the others when you look at the 4 teams in the upper bracket right now, right? I just believe that if we're talking about championship contender, right? Like it just feels tough to see 100 Thieves you know winning with that mid laner compared to, you know, PoE, Jensen, Perks, you know, the top levels that we've seen from these guys is just so far above I think what we've seen from Ryoma. So, you know, I think that is a pretty significant disadvantage, and I think that, you know, that's one of the reasons that I have Cloud9 pretty heavily favored is Perks has been so insane in playoffs throughout his career. It's like been such a consistent thing for him. I think he has gotten better throughout, you know, lock in and spring split, and I think he's playing very well overall now. So, you know, I'm really excited to see what playoff Perks is going to look like in NA, because in EU it was no joke. I mean, this man won 8 LEC titles, you know, for a reason. He's won more than any player ever in Europe, and you know, it was so good when it counted. He was always one of the most clutch players for them, whether it was at MSI or Worlds or in EU. And I'm really interested to see, you know, how he is going to play, because he's someone who, if he thinks he has that advantage, is willing to play really aggressively, right? And I guess it was actually against the Monte, that LeBlanc game that people were kind of referencing, and where, you know, he had reportedly said that like, oh well, like LeBlanc might not have been a good pick, but it was a good pick against the Monte kind of thing. You know, I'm interested to see what he brings out against Ryoma. If he feels like really confident against him, is he going to be bringing out, you know, Aurelias and LeBlancs and aggressive picks and just trying to slam this guy?
It's interesting because I was going to bring it up. Some of the G2 happy plays I've seen Perks pull out here on Cloud9. Okay. And yes, you know, I have a ton of faith. As soon as he came over, I was like, yep, you know, this guy is a consummate, you know, competitor. He's got the drive. He's got the back. Like his resume is as outstanding as you can possibly have. Um, Still though, I feel like if you have some G2 happy plays without the rest of G2 around, is it really happy? There's like the one that sticks out in my mind is his Azir sweep in. I think they were playing Team Liquid.
he hits him to the right.
Went by himself.
Yeah, he goes right in, Jensen to the right, then he turns to the left. He's like, all of Team Liquid are here. I will die. Like my job here is done. Flourish. Like, I'm out of here. Some of those things combined with, if we start to connect the dots with our you know, tinfoil hats here, the blabber play 1v3. Heckram charging in, nobody else around. Azael, though, you start to connect the dots on some of these you know, plays that are going on. That's what would give me a little bit of pause. I think you're maybe more one-sided on Cloud9. I'm also on the Cloud9 side, but I probably have like a bigger percentage, I guess, for 100 Thieves. With some of the things that I have seen in their recovery. I was more worried for them 2 weeks ago than I am now. And you know, talking to Zix a decent amount as well for this team. It does, like, when they put Ryoma in, they only had 3 days of practice with him with that team, and obviously, you know, the more time you know, with him, they're actually solidifying some of what they want to go for, more focus as a team, how they want to play out some of these games. So I do think there is a bigger chance maybe than it being super lopsided, but I'm still, you know, putting my money on Cloud9.
I'm surprised. I don't think. I mean, obviously, mid lane is a big talking point for 100 Thieves this split, and Perks is a big talking point for C9 this split. But I think it's actually not the biggest factor when you look at 100 Thieves struggles and ways that I think C9 are going to beat them, because they've only beaten one playoff bound team this split, or this second half of the split for 100 Thieves. They've only beaten Dignitas. They've lost to every other playoff team. And a lot of their losses to the playoff teams, they just look so horribly uncoordinated. Yeah. And it's still true. Even that, like, they beat FlyQuest, they beat Immortals, and they beat Golden Guardians for like a little three game win streak in the last 2 weeks. But then against TL, that bot invade dive attempt on Tactical after bot lane slammed them level 1. And, like, you know, it was it was okay. They pushed him off turret, fine, whatever. But then they're like contesting Gromp and dying there after Santorna's already killed top and got back bottom, and they're dying there. And it's like, what are you guys doing? And same with like the gank top when there was the ult on the Lilia after Someday already recalled. There was the Skarner pull on the Mundo. There's like all these plays as a team that are just so uncoordinated that I feel like they're going to get Yeah, I feel like they're going to get slammed in playoffs against a team that's actually coordinated and playing well. And it's not a individual player problem in my eyes in any way. I think it's just that they have really struggled as a team to outperform other teams in team situations. Whereas they'll win lanes, like Someday will often win lane. I mean, he got slammed by Alfari, fair enough. And Alfari's, like we said,
and
MVP
Santorin,
candidate.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was a lot about ganking too.
Yeah, but like to that point, like I think that the problems that 100 Thieves are going to have are like I think that they have a better bot lane and a better top lane in individual skill, but like I don't think that they're going to win those laning phases because Blabber has destroyed 100 Thieves the 2 times that they played each other.
I was going to say, when I was preaching about I'm buying what 100 Thieves is selling in the bottom lane, for sure.
Yeah.
It's more so the other way with Cloud9 jungle. Like, and we even have, it's so funny actually that 100 Thieves, content, it really delivered where they're, filming Closer after their game with Cloud9 and he's just running around, everybody freaking out. Blabber is so good. What do we do? Like, and he's really playing it up and it is, he's joking and it's funny and stuff. And it's mostly, for content, but I gotta feel like if you're a jungler in the LCS, you're making these jokes. A lot of jokes stem from truth, right? They don't just come out of nowhere. And
you got a little Blabber in here.
Blabber has destroyed Closer. As much as earlier in the show when you guys were talking about possible demerits for Blabber on MVP votes. As much as there have been a couple of plays in the last couple of weekends, I still heavily weight C9 jungle as the biggest advantage for them in this matchup over 100 Thieves. And guess what? That type of advantage can be played to any lane that they decide to carry with, even to top lane. I don't expect that to be very frequent for this best of 5, but with Fudge playing better, that could be another look for them as well.
That was the only other thing I was going to throw in there was like they already lost in lock-in when 100 Thieves was playing well. They won a number of those first 2 games and almost the third game off really good proactive plays. Those have been absent for 100 Thieves. And C9's top lane, what they had been exploiting, is much better now. And I just don't see the avenues that they're going to use to win.
It's 100 tough.
Thieves still should have won that series. I feel like
they
my God, you're bringing me back, Mark. Oh my God, go ahead and say all that.
It's tough though because it's like we're talking through and we're like, yeah, Cloud9 much better since lock-in. Okay, yep. 100 Thieves much worse since lock-in. Okay, yep. Cloud9 2-0s them in the regular season, and Cloud9 still beat them in lock-in. Like maybe they shouldn't have. To what you're saying, it's close series, obviously, but it feels like if you have opposite trajectories and one team already beat you before, the best of
it's hard to argue.
Starts to get pretty
curly Q.
Yeah, the best of 5 starts to get pretty one-sided as far as predictions go. I agree. I think Blabber has been pretty dominant. I think there's no way he's going to get the Olaf. Like that was the last game they played against them when they beat him down in 24 minutes or whatever and just ran over the game on Olaf. That was like the once every couple weeks someone forgot to ban Olaf against Blabber game and then he gets it and he just runs over everybody. It's kind of been like that last year and this year. He's just not allowed to play that champion or he's going to 1v9 the game. I think it'll be interesting. My biggest concern has been that, yeah, like I agree with, I think, kind of what you were saying earlier, Mark, where just 100 Thieves just seems very mistake prone. They're not feeling coordinated. They don't have a clear identity anymore. That they've kind of like lost this like early aggressive dive team thing. So it just hasn't felt like for the last like 3 weeks, it doesn't feel like 100 Thieves knows what 100 Thieves is, right? And I don't think that you can depend on Someday to just destroy a series. I think that in lock-in, he top gapped Fudge like every game and it didn't result in the series win. And I think that has been like one thing that I've kind of had as a knock against Someday for a long while is that, maybe it's unfair slightly, but I hasn't ever really been able to shake it where it's like, yes, he's amazing individually. He has these great laning phases, but I often feel like his dominant performances do not result in wins. And And that's a feeling that I've had with Someday for a few years, where it's like he can have these crazy monster performances where he's like 8-0 on Renekton or something. He's crushing the game, but they lose. And yes, that is a team thing too, right? Like, of course, if his teammates were playing better around him in that game, that would be a win. But it's rare to think of these games from Someday where I'm just like, wow, you like really 1v9 that one. Like it feels like he has these great performances, but they don't always result in wins, and that's something that I think is tough. Where otherwise, if it was like Alfari or something, you might be saying like, hey, like maybe that's just your game plan. You just play purely through Alfari, and he'll just like carry you to victory.
I have some someday 1v9s just so heavily stuck in my mind. So specifically with Renekton, even too, there was one this split with it where he has he's super fed Renekton. He's the strongest one on the team, and he teleports in behind a retreating whatever team they were playing to trap them. They were at their inhibitor turret knocking on the door, and like he teleports in, they get this big flank, and
I think I remember that game.
Team.
He's had some amazing games for sure. Like he's an amazing top laner. I'm not trying to say that he's not. It just doesn't feel like, for some reason, and maybe you guys disagree, I just don't see Someday as like a series win condition, and I feel like I never have in NA, where like he just hasn't ever been that for me.
I actually kind of agree with you. I think, I forget which split it was, but I had ranked once in my power rankings again. I had ranked Someday pretty low, and I remember it was a contentious point, but it was basically this, that like he plays well on an individual level, but I still have not seen him coordinated around consistently over the course of a split as a win condition.
Yeah.
Despite how good he is. And like even this split, when he was dominating with pressure on the top side, none of the ganks really worked out for him. I mean, Lock-in Tournament obviously was an exception. Lock-in Tournament, he was incredible, but then during the regular split, they kind of abandoned trying to find kills for him because it just wasn't working. Their ganks are still, to this day, uncoordinated around him. And that has been true with almost every jungler he's played with, except for Meteos. I think Meteos worked well with him. But, like, there's been on his Dignitas days when he was with, like, that team, it was, like, Alltech and can't remember who else was on there, but like it was another thing where like, yeah, he's individually great, and you kind of just leave Someday on an island, and he'll show up for team fights and have these insane flanks and stuff, and sometimes 1v9 the game, but not because you played through him for the entire game, or like I don't know.
You don't draft for him, and that's not your win condition. You counter pick, fifth pick, red side, and you win the game off of Someday. It doesn't feel like that's the style.
Yeah, and
I can't get on board with this, but that's fine.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're talking about playstyle stuff because I think everyone knows he's a great player. It's just how well he has fit in with teams at times.
That's fine. You guys can have your own vote over
C9 3-0.
C9 3-1.
That's actually how I feel. I feel like it's a 3-0 too. It could be a 3-1, but I'm feeling 3-0, man. The more I think about it, the more I'm on C9's side. I'm just like, 100 Thieves just aren't playing that well. It's felt like a sinking ship for a few weeks. And yes, Cloud9 did have the kind of blip on the radar, but when I look individually, like I'm not even buying a lot of the advantages. Like, yes, I think 100 Thieves, you could say their bot lane has been better, but it's not like so much better that I think that they can get an advantage there to win the game. Blabber has been way better in closer. I way rather have Perks than Ryoma. I think they're playing better as a team. And Fudge has gotten so much better than he was in Lock-in, where Someday blasted him, and they still lost the series, even when Someday blasted him every single game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to your point, like it's not like, oh my goodness, and I admittedly I love this 100 Thieves bottom lane, but it's not like they're going up against a punching bag here. This is Ben and Vulcan.
People are talking about Vulcan as maybe the best support of the split.
Yeah. My one gripe with Sven is that he has had a decent amount of mistakes when Vulcan leaves him. It's like every time you're like, all right, Vulcan's going to make a roam play, you're like, where's Sven? Who's watching Sven? Somebody check on Sven. Is
the baby's getting out of the crib.
Man, yeah. To me, also off of your coordination points, it does feel like I'm getting more worried for 100 Thieves mid jungle. And mid jungle still is so important in a lot of these plays, especially if you're a team that is focused a lot on early tower dives and roaming around like that. So yeah, definitely a tough one. I'm still gonna go. I'm going at least a little better with 1-3.
Edgy take.
And I say it as 1-3 from 100 Thieves perspective, so I'm like, woo, 100 Thieves!
He's on the 100 Thieves side. I like it. All right. Okay, moving on here. That's our playoff preview. I'm really excited for it. We have some Apple reviews. Thank you for these.
Oh.
This first one comes from Sleep Lesson? Sleep Lesson? Yeah, I think Sleep Lesson. All right, gives 5 stars. Best LOL podcast with great insights into the LCS Pro League. Would be 6 stars if Kobe had a cat. Might be worth considering that, Kobe.
You hear that, Travis? He does, because since my power went out in just my room, I have extension cables out the door, so the door is actually open. We get a cat, 6 stars.
There you go. All right, next one from Roughster66. He says, I'm judging your decor. 5-star podcast, no doubt. But am I to believe that Kobe has the time to care for a real houseplant? Or is it Travis? MarkZ has a suspicious number of books in the background. Like, not enough for someone who actually likes books. Way too staged. Where's the built-over tavern custom Zoom background? Just
Mark's
kidding.
fake.
Love the content. That's
Actually,
true. He has like 5 books. Well, no,
that's
that's
every
not
book that he's read. That's every book he's read in his life right there.
This
This
that's
is not a
his lifetime
bookshelf.
work.
What do you want me to do? I have a bookshelf in my bedroom full of books with that me and
Well,
Ashley
this is
read,
on your
but, like,
background. We can't prove that.
What,
Also-
what do you want me to put here? I can put like a couple more books on the top one.
They want a better shelf, Mark. They want an actual
Yeah.
bookshelf, like instead of the little.
Get like a
just-
beautiful, mahogany bookshelf.
I put
just
my-
Have you
like-
seen Jake? Have you seen
hand-carved.
Spawns? You see Spawn's freaking bookshelf?
Yeah.
That
That's
thing
a
is
book
like.
reader right there. That guy reads.
That's his entire
guy
office. I
reads.
share
That guy
this.
reads.
I got a printer over there. I got another desk set up. Like, hold on.
Mark
Yeah,
browses, but Spawn
kinda-
reads.
Now
You
that
see
we
this?
have the
Look at all this
smaller
stuff I have
crop,
in here. All right, I don't
you
have
don't
room.
get. Yeah, I've got way better posters up there. These ones, right?
Is it a
these
real
are the-
plant? Are you going to reveal
these are the
here
big
live on the
It
dive?
is. It is a real plant.
Do you water it?
It's what I was going to say. My tip on houseplants is actually less
The
is
plastic
more.
ones.
Most often, the biggest mistake people make taking care of houseplants is watering too much.
And they drown it.
And I made that mistake, and it had a lot of brown leaves, but I brought it back to life with some plant food and watering less. All right, that was a lot on one review, though.
That was. All right, we got the last one here for this week. Ragtime Dandy says, I wish my parents would have played the dive when I slept as a baby instead of Mozart. Probably would have been better for my long-term development. I like that one. Thank you guys for the reviews. If you leave some funny ones, we might find them. You might heard them, get them here on the show. All right, next we got the Fantasy LCS update. I think, do you guys have any
we all
updates for
lost.
me?
Ooh,
I mean,
let
I'm
me
dead
check.
and gone.
I was in the bronze finals with working towards my wood trophy.
There's
Let
a-
me check.
Do
I was in
we
the-
want to say who won? Because I heard who won, and I don't know. Do we want to give them credit?
No, I don't think they deserve the credit. Maybe this
Oh,
person can tweet it
You
out.
know, it was probably one of us.
Yeah, it
Let's
was
leave it at
probably
that
one
and
of
move on.
I got 4th place. I lost to Crumbs in the 3rd, 4th place match.
I
this
can't
week.
do. I can't do him dirty. Freak won. I heard Freak won.
I won my
haven't
wood
actually
trophy. If that counts for anything.
You got
Censor,
fifth?
post production censor
yeah,
that from
I,
Azael.
I beat Emily last week and slam Yasso this week.
Free. All right. Well, we're the 4th, 5th, and
You're the losers
I think I
bracket
was like
champion.
8th or something, best fantasy player. So congratulations to us. Round of applause, everyone. Fantasy was delightful. All right. Moving on here. We got some anchor questions. This first one comes from Dan Thompson.
Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time caller, love the show. The last few weeks, we've seen more and more ADCs in mid. My silver tier understanding is that historically this is because the champ requires levels to be useful, like Corki. Were there changes to cause this to happen, or is this just a classic case of champs being so busted you can play them anywhere? Thanks.
So correct me if I'm wrong. It's just Lucian and Tristana,
Lucian and
right?
Trist.
That's
Lucian-
that's more. I'd say it's a combination. There are two things. When they gave all the AD carries more stats. I forget how long ago it was. The beginning of preseason, I think. They did this adjustment where they got more health base stats and stuff like that, which definitely helped a lot. But I honestly just think that Tristana is overtuned at the moment.
Busto.
You can look at on her solo queue win rates in addition to having this high presence in pro. I expect her, to get a couple taps with the nerf bat.
And Lucian's always been a mid counter pick into certain matchups. He just does quite well, and he is a
SMG's doing it
caster.
blind.
Some teams are doing it blind.
POB.
He's also, I mean, just a caster, to the caller's own point about like, hey, I thought you wanted levels on these things. It's like, yeah, Lucian has a lot of abilities that he's very happy to level up quickly, and he's more of an early game champion, so you want power spike fast. Tristana is just insane wave control and pushing and all this stuff on top of just like the scaling. And when Trist is good, she tends to be good at all stages of the game.
Yeah. I've been playing a lot of Tristana. I really like that champion, and I was trying to sell it to people a while ago in pro, and people weren't buying. So I'm kind of happy to see it come out, because I do feel like even when I was in bad matchups mid lane, there are some exceptions, but you could just get a bunch of attack speed and just push the wave.
Yeah,
And you're just farming. It's like, well, turns out you're really good later too, so it doesn't really matter. You go Zerker Greaves first, and you shove the wave. Go shield bow if it's a really bad matchup. So I think it's more about those individual champions. All right, we got the next one here. This one is from, I'm not sure if that's an IL or an II, but Ilan Kaplan.
Ilan?
Let's say it's an IL.
Hey guys, my name is Ilan. Big fan of the show. I have a two-part question about the development rosters. Some rosters like Dignitas have done really well, and others like Golden Guardians haven't. So the first part is, do you think the position of the veteran players helps the rookie players do better? For example, is leading from jungle and support like Dardoch and Aframu better than from AD carry like Stixay? The second part is having too many rookies on the team actually harmful for their growth? Since like Golden Guardians are kind of getting bodied in every game, is it possible that swapping in one more veteran to the roster would help the remaining rookies improve at a faster rate? Thanks so much, guys. Cat for Kobe.
Woo! I like this one. Because of the question, not just because of the shout out.
But also because of the shout out.
Yeah, but yeah. I would say it is slightly more beneficial to have roles that are traditionally given space in professional team communication early on in the game. And that is traditionally junglers and supports. So I like the call out there. I would not say it precludes, having a really good pro in one of the, or a veteran in one of the other roles can still add, the veteran shot calling and the clarification for, dragon setups and all the little things that you might forget as a rookie. I do think that it definitely helps though, because communication for pro teams, there's so much stuff you have to actually cut out from comms. And you do have to kind of focus a little bit more on some roles having more of a voice early on in the game, which I think definitely helps it. Then you have the problem where like some pros or some veterans just are not, big communicators as well. So.
Yeah, I think on the second part about, is it harmful to have too many, like just getting bodied every game? I think it can be. Oftentimes, you'll get your confidence shot. You're not necessarily learning things, you're just getting hard slammed every game. And this isn't necessarily true with Golden Guardians. I'm not on the inside, so I don't know how it's going. But, I think there's a number of players who just, like, take Tactical, for example, and if he debuted on this Golden Guardians roster, would anyone think that he was a great AD carry? If there's just not enough of an opportunity to slam lane phase, and then you get into team fights and you're just outscaled in team fights. Like, anyone who's actually even a good player won't even probably look good in an environment where you're just losing every single game, even if you are a skilled player. Maybe some like scouts and coaches and players will be like, oh, this guy's actually pretty good, but fans won't probably pick up on that if you're just losing every game.
Do you want a tidbit, Azael, or do you agree?
Sure.
Because I feel like the second part is so easy. When you're designing experiments, first thing they teach you is
control
variables. You don't want to test 5 things at once. You want to test a couple things at once and keep rookies are basically that. They are the uncontrolled.
Yeah, exactly. The baseline of a lot of these other players, right? It's the exact same thing when I was on playtest, right? If you're trying to test a certain champion in a certain role, you try to play standard stuff elsewhere that doesn't just warp the game, right? It's like you're not picking Tryndamere top if you're trying to test a control mage mid, because Tryndamere makes the whole game about him. It's the same thing, with these players where, if everything's falling apart, it's really hard to tell sometimes, what the specific problems are, or what the individual problems are. It's like, well, did you lose top lane because your jungle lost? Did you lose jungle because your top lane lost? Well, your mid lane also lost. Was that the reason? Well, your bot lane was bad too. So was it because you couldn't
This
get
Evelyn with a
vision?
25 stack Medjay seems to be an issue.
Who fed the Evelyn, right? It's hard to pinpoint. So I think it's an interesting question. I think it depends on the team though, because then you also do have other examples and like rookies, right? You can have a ton of amateur experience like in academy, and then it's less of a deal. Golden Guardians has 2 people straight from collegiate, which is basically like you are fresh in pro, right? Like you haven't even had the kind of like academy, semi-pro, whatever you want to call it, experience. Whereas like Suning was like basically all rookies. Like you can have teams with all kinds of young players, and maybe a veteran or 2, but you can have teams that are successful with like almost all young players, but maybe they had more academy experience, or maybe they're just better players.
Yeah, I was about to throw in like Griffin, Damwon, and V5,
Yep.
some of these teams that are heavily rookies. A lot of those guys already did cut their teeth, whether it's through their Challenger Series, the LDL, whatever it is. Like a lot of them are not fresh, like never seen this guy try and compete at the highest level kind of thing. So whenever
Question.
Never understood that saying, by the way. Where
your
could that
teeth?
possibly come from? Cutting your teeth? That just sounds...
Let's ask Google.
Yeah. Okay. I'll read the next question while Azael's doing research. Then. Where are we at? Was that the last one?
we're on the Twitter
No.
question.
If you're
Twitter.
building a super roster, this one comes from Cam Edgecomb. If you're building a super roster in North America to win Worlds, who would your resident players be? How valuable is someone like Jensen compared to Core JJ?
The easy answer of Doublelift is now gone.
Mhm.
For who your residents are.
To
I
win
think
Worlds, though.
Blabber for me is the new easy answer.
Oh, that's true. Blabber,
Doublelift's
Jensen is a resident too, right?
Doublelift's
me-
never got out of groups at Worlds. Why are you guys taking him to win Worlds?
True.
Well, we're not, because he's not in the LCS anymore.
Yep.
I am actually
Blabber
using
Jensen.
Blabber, and then I'm going with a bottom lane. And I'll just go,
FBI Huhi.
do I want to split them up? That's what I'm thinking. Do I want to split them up or keep them together for synergy? I
FBI
keep them together
Vulcan.
for synergy. Because even though, like you're saying, Jensen is a resident, I am winning Worlds. I want rookie. I want, so.
They did
I'm
not
swinging for the
clarify
fences.
that our imports had to be currently in NA. So yeah, give me
Oh, true. You're just gonna take Chovy?
Chovy and Nuggery.
Just
or
give me
something, I don't know.
Blabber, Vulcan, FBI, Chovy, and I believe in the Shy. He can bounce back, or maybe not.
You're such a shy
that
stan.
is a risky one.
Yeah, the Shy is trolling hard lately, so I'll take Nuggery. There you go. That's how we win Worlds. Okay, I got the etymology here. Apparently, to
Okay.
cut your teeth, the term alludes to the literal verb to cut teeth, meaning to have your teeth first emerge through a baby's gums, a usage dating from the late 1600s.
You know what? That makes more sense. And there's not a quicker way to say, your teeth coming through your gums as a baby. So I'll accept
Teething.
that, I guess.
There's a verb, teething.
Okay, honestly, nope, yeah, never mind. Well,
That's not what teething is like, to the pain they're experiencing. That's not like the
No, you're
teeth
going
popping
through teething.
it's
Yeah.
it's coming from them popping through. Okay,
All right, well, maybe it
makes-
sucks, but it's from the 1600s.
makes way more sense now, though.
Yep,
That's
it
a
makes
lot of
more
sayings.
sense.
They're like, this doesn't really hold up at all. When you look at it, it's from the 1600s when people were dumb. There was less of an education.
Guess what, Mark? People are still dumb today, and that'll wrap us up for now.
That's me right there.
For this week's episode of The Dive. Thank you, Honda, for making this episode possible. And remember, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm, and especially step to the new YouTube channel, youtube.com/LCS. You can send us your questions on Twitter. You can send us your voice questions on Anchor. You can leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts. We're checking them all out. You might get on the show. The hashtag DiveLOL can be used for all that stuff, and send us any more comments you have, anything you want to see us do in the show. We're happy to hear
Dream about us, write in your journal about us, you know.
Send physical mail.
Yep.
I don't know
True.
where you'd send it, but
I don't know either.
Roam around
fan
LA
art,
looking.
karaoke, cosplay.
Be careful what you wish for, Kobe.
I don't know.
You're talking about people can send you their dreams and send you physical items and stuff. This is getting dicey. I don't want to know what you're dreaming about me. I'm just gonna put that out there. So catch us again
Get a
next
pensive
week.
from Harry Potter and send it to me.
Saturday and Sunday playoffs are here. Let's go.